was right now. I trained at Yale, and after that I went to New York and did a lot of off and on Broadway shows there for props, and then relocated to California because I was in winter. So I did that. So today we're going to chat a little bit about mold making, and then we're actually going to do a face mold on Steven, so close. Steven. Jenna is also going to assist me. I'm excited about that. Throughout this whole entire presentation, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. You don't need me, don't wait or anything. Just throw up your hand if I don't see your hand. Just be like, hey, I got a question. I can answer questions while I'm also doing this. And I love questions because that's how we learn. Awesome. Obviously, I'm really excited because I love doing this. One of my favorite things. So let me talk a little bit about some of the molds that I've done in the past. My favorite is live casting, which is what we will be doing today. This is an example of one of the things that I have done. It's a foot. This is actually my very first project that I did for live casting at Yale. This is dragon skin, which is a smooth-on material. It's a silicone. It's what you would use to fill the cast or the mold that we're about to make. It gives great texture. I'll even pass this around. If you don't want to touch it, I won't be offended. My girlfriend hates it, and I scare her every time she comes over. And so, after making this mold and filling it with the silicone, I airbrush painted. And when you're dealing with painting silicone, you have to use silicone paint. Smooth On has a paint product called Psycho Paint, and you can mix it with different pigments to get a coloring. You can the opposite word, make it thinner, and put it into an airbrush. And that's what I did for the foot. I airbrushed it. It's a very long process because you have to wait for every layer to dry before you put on another layer. It's just like painting. You keep, adding on skin, all muddled and everything. Yeah. So that's an example of a finished product. How we got to that is, this is the mold. This is a really crappy mold because this is the very first mold I ever made on a person. So it's very flimsy. I should have made it a lot thicker. The tear here should have been cleaner. You live and you learn. After putting the silicone on, you put a mother mold on top of it, which is generally plaster. Once again, this is a very flimsy one. It should have been thicker. So what happens when I put this together? So what happens is when you say this is still on the foot. So you have the silicone on the actual foot, and then you put the mother mold on top of that to keep its structure. Because if you were to cast this with no mother mold, your mold's going to be all flimsy. It's not going to have that form of the actual foot. So that's why you need a mother mold. And we'll be doing the same thing with the face as well. And since this is a foot, and there's a lot of different curves to the foot, you have to have a two-part mother mold. So that's why there's two sections for this. If I put this plaster on the foot completely, it ain't coming off. And that's a problem. So you want it to come off. They get scared when things get stuck. So you gotta have two parts there. So jumping ahead to face mold. So this is an example of a mold that my friend did on me, actually. So this is my face. So we have the silicone in here, the plaster mold outside, and then when you fill it with plaster or silicone like the foot, it comes out with you have the mold done. So this is what you're going to be doing today. Also, here's another example of a face that I have done. Yes?
About how long does it usually take to dry?
Sorry, say that again?
About how long does it usually take to dry?
For it to cure, it depends on what material you're using. Each smooth-on product will come in with a kind of like a key, and it'll tell you have like 30 seconds to mix this and get it on there, and then it'll take 2 hours to dry. This one is 90 seconds. So we have 90 seconds for it to cure, and then we can put the plaster on top, and then it'll take about 20 minutes after that to fully cure before we can take it off. And usually what I like to do is I like to have a little like sample set next to me to so I can physically check to see, because we often have to take into account like what's the temperature of the room. Is there a lot of moisture in the room? Because that will affect your mold. So I just like to have like a little test sample. When you're doing face mold, it's a little bit easier because when we do this, you'll see there'll just be like a pool of silicone falling down from him, so we'll be able to see that. So the differences between this mold and what we're about to do, this one you see there are the ears. I'm not going to do this on Stephen. Why do I want to say Stephen? On Stephen, because he's never done a face mold before and it can feel extremely claustrophobic. I only do ears on people who have done them before. Anytime I have a head that I have to make, I usually do ears on somebody else one at a time. Yes. You could do a whole head, definitely, 100%. If you wanted to do a whole head, you would need to put like a bald cap on and everything, and make sure the actor is like 100% a-okay with that, and then you would slit it from the back and pull it over. What?
Facial hair?
So facial hair gets a little bit tricky. This product right here is called Body Double Silk, which does a lot better with facial hair. Now, your facial hair, I would suggest like either shaving it off or like trimming it if we were doing your face. So that is something you do have to take into consideration if you're doing this for production and your director wants your actor to grow out their beard, but you need a face casting of them, so you need to get that face cast like the moment he is in the production, you get that so that he can have a clean shaven face, and then he has time to grow it instead of like 2 weeks before tech, be like, hey, I gotta shave off that beard you've been growing for a month. So you wanna do that. So back to differences between this and what we're about to do. So I mentioned the ears. We're not going to be doing the ears. As I said, it gets very claustrophobic. When I did this, you know, your eyes are covered, it gets dark, your ears are covered, so you can't hear anything. So it's you have to be very calm when you're doing the ears. Another thing is, I mentioned this is Body Double Silk, which is good for facial hair and getting it off if you do have like a scruff and such. We won't be using that product, we'll be using Body Double, their standard one, which if you see right here, is this purple right here. So for this mold, we did two, just to kind of experiment with the Body Silk. A lot of people will do a layer of Body Silk and then the standard Body Double on top of it, just to give it a little bit extra strength. A lot of people like Body Double Silk for more detail and for facial hair purposes. Yeah, also another thing that I like to point out that we will be doing here is nostrils. So a lot of people put straws up the nose or stuff like that. I hate doing that because the main reason is it distorts the nostrils, so you don't get an accurate representation of the person's nose. And two, it's really not necessary because it actually is constricting their airway instead of helping them. So I just leave the nostrils alone. So you'll see with our presentation today, when we get closer to the nose, it's going to be the very last thing we do. I'm going to just go around his nose. I'm going to ask him to blow really hard with his nose just in case anything dripped in, and then we're going to put on the plaster. We're not going to cover it at all. What I do is when I'm done with the mold and the mold is off of the model, I fill it thin. So I just take it to my counter and then I just dab it in here and let it cure like that. So then when you're filling it, you know, it's not just draining from the nose. Yeah, that's kind of a little, very quick, I know, overview on some of the molds that I've made and such. Does anybody have questions before we start? Yes. Thank you. So, Coke bottle. When I did Assassins at Yale, we wanted to throw a Coke bottle every night, and we didn't want to throw glass, so they asked maybe we should have a resin version. So what I did is I took a period-accurate Coke bottle, and I made a 2-part mold with Mold Star, which is also another smooth-on product, silicone. It's not safe for skin, it's only for products like this. I made a 2-part mold, meaning you can take it apart, just like this is a 2-part mold, mother mold. Did that, and then for this one, if you see I also pass this around, it is hollow, because we didn't want it to be solid, because when like the light hit it, you could tell it was solid, and yada, yada, yada. So I did a slip cast, which meant that I would fill the mold with this material, and I believe it was Simpact Smooth On that I used, but not 100% on that. I need to double check. And I would literally roll it for about 20 minutes. So I got a good exercise when doing it. I had to make about 7 of them, and then I just easily painted on these. This is a urethane base, so acrylic paint will attach to it. Silicone, as I said earlier, you need a specific silicone. Yeah, that's all. Any other questions? Yeah.
Since you were saying you wanted to throw the Coke bottle, does that break? But like, of course, like it breaks into like smoother pieces.
So for that, that was a concern. So we tried a variety of different products to find the strongest one. So this one will break, but you really got to be chucking it on the floor. This will do pretty good if I drop it or if I throw it off stage and somebody's catching it with, some Duvetine or such. That'll be okay. And if it drops on the floor, it'll be okay. I think throughout the performance, we had only one bust, and that was because the actor was really in the mood. So I was going for it. And totally missed the Duvetine that was like off stage. And we're like, alrighty then. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay, cool. All right, so like I said, we're gonna be making a face mold today. I will take the glasses now. So what I do when I'm doing a face mold, I already gave him a little bit of an overview of what's gonna happen. And I do that with any actor, model, whoever I'm working with before starting. What I'm going to be doing is using body double, like I said, in this very fancy little gun. Sometimes you don't have the gun and you have to mix it and stir it and all that jazz. And this is equal parts. So when measuring, it doesn't go by weight, it goes by volume. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting on his forehead, and it's just going to naturally gravitate down, and then we're going to come across his mouth. We're going to try to scoop under the chin as much. Since this isn't for a production, I'm not going to have him in a very awkward position to do this, but I have had actors in very weird positions because a director wants a specific angle. One time I had a lady who I had to cast her whole entire leg, and she's the tallest woman I've ever seen, so we had to have her sit on like a 6-foot ladder and just dangle her leg so we could get the correct angle and her whole leg, which is sad because she was a trooper though. She was like, this is getting heavy. Because once you put the plaster on, when you're doing like arms or legs, it does start to get pretty heavy. On the face, it's not too bad. So we'll put the silicone on, and then we're gonna go down the nose and make a very small little strip down here. I'm gonna ask him to blow his nose, and we are going to be going around with these things, kind of just like scooping out if there's anything that fell into the nose. Jenna is gonna be going around and kind of making sure it stays up. It will naturally fall, and there's gonna be a lot of product here. It's just gravity. Can't really fix it. But so that's the product and the process of what we're gonna do. Right now to start, I'm gonna have him put on Body Double Release Cream, and we're just gonna put a thin layer all over his face, so it kind of comes off a little bit easier. You don't want to put too much of this on, because if you put too much, it will go onto the mold. So you'll see a chunk of the cream on the mold. We're also going to put a heavy amount on his eyebrows and on his eyelashes and around his hairline. This will come off the hairs, but if you don't put a good amount on this on, a few might get plucked. I once had an actor who started to take it off and was convinced she had no more eyelashes and started panicking, and I was like, I promise you have eyelashes. But she was freaking out because she saw 2 eyelashes in the mold. So whenever that happens, just try to keep your model calm. It's gonna be okay. But yeah, she freaked out for sure. We also have hand signals that I do. Throughout this process, I'm going to ask him, are you doing okay? He's going to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if it's a thumbs down, we're just going to pause for a moment and give him time to like breathe it out, or let me know if we need to take it off. Also throughout the process, if he ever needs a moment to communicate with me and say, I need to take a break, he's gonna have one hand up. If there comes a time where he decides this is too much for him, he does not want it on his face at all, and he wants it off right now, he's gonna put 2 hands up and we're gonna take it off. If that does happen, unfortunately, we won't get to see the final product, but his safety is top priority to me. So I always say that with every person I'm doing a casting of, to make sure they feel comfortable, because this can feel claustrophobic. You don't see, you have to sit still, you can't move, you can't laugh or anything like that. So I always want to make sure they feel comfortable, number one. Great, I think that's my spiel. So let's get started. Okay, so on your face. So if you don't have this product, you can use Vaseline, which I usually use. It works great. But that's always a good one, and it's cheap. Smooth On makes these great kits, and this is part of their kit. So it comes with a gun, it comes with just enough material to do a face or a hand, one or the other. It comes with the plaster bandages that we will need to create the mother mold. So it has everything in their little kits. We'll lather you up. I think that's eyelashes, and what you're going to do is you're going to just hold it up to your eyelash and then like blink it kind of like that. Yeah. And can everybody see okay? If you can't see, if you want to like come to the sides, that's cool. I'm fine with that.
I've just never had weight on my eyelashes.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling on your eyelashes putting something that's, especially if you don't wear mascara. It's definitely weird. Yeah, I'll do your ones. Now, some people will put on like a bald cap just to help with hairs. I don't have one, so we're not. That's the answer to that. You good?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I have no sense of smell, so I want to be able to tell you. So if you're ever doing a project that requires a mold or anything, live casting, whatnot, you can actually call Smooth On. And they are so sweet on the phone. Everybody is fully trained. And you can just ask them, I need to make this. What product should I use? And they will go through a step-by-step, tell you what to use. You know, if you're like, I'm tight on budget, they'll give you other ideas. So it's really, they're a great resource to have. And when it does come off, it is going to feel like it's working. And it's very important to tell model, actor, whoever is doing this, the process. You know, like we're going to start on the forehead and we're going to do that. And you're going to see while I go through this that I'm going to be talking that through as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
A million years ago when I learned to do this in grad school, we used dental alginate. How is that different than silicone?
So alginate is a one-time mold. Silicone, I can use this mold for like a dozen or more. It's more durable. Yeah. But when I'm on a budget, I'll use alginate for sure. Sorry, what? Yeah, alginate will shrink after like a few hours or so that's why it's just a one-time situation. Alright, so I'm just double checking that he has enough stuff on his eyelashes and on his eyebrows. Great. When doing this, I generally wear gloves because I'm mixing and stuff, but because we're going to be using this gun, it's going to automatically mix in this tube. So I'm not going to wear gloves because if it gets on my skin, it'll just cure and I can peel it right off. But it's also a preference. Also, I have freakishly small fingers, so no gloves ever fit me. It's a very sad life, guys. And this always looks so intense and ridiculous, but it's the best thing. I love it. Alrighty, are you ready? Rock and roll. Okay. I'm gonna put another thing on you to like. Also, always put plastic down, as you can see, because it's gonna go everywhere, and it doesn't really like to come out of clothes. So that's why I'm wearing my old apron and have him covered. Cool. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to ask if you can get into a comfortable position. If you can hold, you're going to close your eyes completely, and once we start putting the silicone on you, just make sure to normal breathing, no talking, no blinking. Try not to move any of your muscles. So if you see once I squeeze, like it starts to mix, we have a blue and a green. By the time it gets out to here, it's going to mix. Because stirring this gets really old after a while. You ready? All right, we're going to start on the forehead. And I'll start on your side, so it'll start to drip down and just slowly start to pull it up. You're going to feel this change its form. Once you feel it starting to hurt, stop touching. Alright, so we're just gonna let gravity take its thing. I'm not gonna get real close to the hairline. I kind of want to stay away. Since this isn't for a production, we're not going to be specific on it. And this is going to start to drip down the side of your face. Also check this, so it's going to be a little challenging. Okay, it's going to start to go over your eyes, so be aware that's coming up. Very weird feeling when it goes over the eyes. And with the eyes, with people who have very pronounced eyebrows, you really have to make sure you get into the eye sockets, or you'll have air bubbles in your mold, which are fixable. So if you do get air pockets, those are always fixable. Just lightly, not press on his eye, but just kind of give it a little tap. This is right here. So there's a little air bubble right there. It's not right there. I'm going to pull it over. How are you doing? Awesome. Alright, now I'm going to go over your mouth. So like I said, I want to do the nose last. Because breathing, I hear, is important these days. And I'm not going to worry about it dripping because, like I said, it's gravity. I'm not going to find it. Try to do it. That's going to be a little bit more challenging. Now, if it was very important to get his chin, underneath his chin, I would have him laying down more at a different angle to get under there. How you doing? Great. And if you can come down to here and try to tuck under, I'm going to pour it here. Anybody got any questions while we're going? It screws up the mold. That's just 100% 100% that. I've never had somebody sneeze actually, thankfully, knock on wood, that never happens. But it is a possibility. And if that were to happen, I would just try to quickly get the material back to where it was. If it has already set, then I'm a little bit like out of luck there, and I might have to redo. Yeah.
If the model wants it off before it's set, how would you remove it?
Sorry, could you speak up just a little bit more?
If the model wants it off before it's set, how would you remove it while it's still liquid?
So this does cure pretty quickly, and I would have to wait like a second or so for it to get a little cured. So what I would do is I would just try to talk them through, calming them down, and saying, we're getting it off right now, it's coming off, this is what we're doing, this is what needs to happen. The more you communicate with them and help them calm down, the better it'll go. Luckily, I have never experienced that yet, but it is always a possibility. Yeah, please. How are we doing? Doing great? I'm going to put a little bit more in your eye, so just feel that. You're doing great. I'm going to go to the other eye. I'm going to put a little bit more in the eye. And I'm just kind of using the nozzle here to drag it out. I'm not putting pressure on his eye at all. If there's any pressure that needs to happen, Jenna will do that with the stick. But right now, it's just kind of like lightly moving it over. I'm going to slice it here. Alright, I'm going to start to go over your nose. I'm just doing a very light business on his nose. So see, I'm kind of just going back and forth on his nose, just slowly going down. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come down the middle of his nostrils and make the tiniest little thing. And I'm going to go under his nostrils. Make sure that stays out of his nostrils. I'm going to go at the top of your nose. It's not getting through your nostrils. And what I do when I get near the nose is I start to pull it away, because you know it's going to want to come down. Okay, if Steven, hope I said that. If you can just blow with your nose, just really hard without moving your head real quick. Great. Great, so we're good there. I'm going to just drop a little bit right on there. Great, so I just had him blow just to double check nothing comes out. And we're doing good. It's an area I just kind of like to take a little extra time because, you know, you don't want him to die of suffocation.
So what are you guys doing with the stick?
So with the sticks, what I'm doing is, or mostly Jenna is doing, is kind of helping it not drip and fall, because we want this to stay on the face and not just drip all the way off. So this kind of helps it stay on until it's cured. And you can actually feel when it starts to cure. And once you feel it's starting to get a little harder to move, that's when you step away and you go to another section. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so now we have kind of a base on. What we're gonna do, since we have extra material, I like to do another layer, so it thickens up a little bit. We don't want this to be too flimsy. So we're just gonna do the same thing we just did. We're gonna start with the forehead and work our way down. All right, so we're gonna start with the forehead again. Just be careful because underneath it's gonna want to move. All right, we're gonna go over your eyes again. So this next layer that we're putting on, we need to be extra careful with because the layer underneath is still curing. So we don't want to put too much pressure on here or it's gonna affect the mold underneath. So what I do is I just like lightly try to smooth it out. And ideally you want this to be smooth, but honestly, it does not matter. I know a lot of people get very finicky about it. It doesn't really matter. As long as there's not huge like chunks that the mold could get stuck in, you're generally fine. How you doing? Awesome. Great. And as you can see, the nostrils are completely cleared, so this mold won't be affected by straws or anything like that. Put another layer down here. And I'm just gonna check it and just tap it. Tack it, that's not real. Touch it to see if it's tacky. And it's pretty good. So at this point, if they were like, I need it off, I could take it off easily and it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be a problem. Because this cures pretty quickly, which I like. Because nobody wants to sit in this forever. Okay, so I have some extra left. I'm actually gonna save this until after we put the mother mold on. We'll talk a little bit about why I'm gonna do that. Now, a thing that we could do if you want to start working, get some water. Jenna's gonna run and get us some water real quick. We kind of want it to be lukewarm because we're going to start dipping these plaster bandages in the water to start setting the plaster, and then we're gonna place it around his face to create the mother mold. How you doing down there? Awesome. So sometimes when you're doing a mold, if this is a mold that you're going to be using a lot of times, I like to create keys. What a key is literally you could use some bolts. I've used those before, like little bolts, little hex heads and all that stuff, and cover them in silicone and plop them on the cheekbones, on the forehead, and on the chin. And that will create a key for the mother mold to lock into. And that's usually good to have if you're doing this multiple times and you want to like get this set in very easily. This is an example of some keys, like pre-made ones that we just made a little channel, poured some silicone in. So this allows it to lock into the mother mold better than if it didn't have keys. Since this isn't for a production, we don't need to like make sure it latches in every time we're doing a mold. That's okay not to do for today. Yes?
What kind of production would call for like a face?
I did a Vita, and I actually had to create the whole entire body of the actor for the opening scene. So I had to build her arms, her whole entire head, and the body luckily was covered in fabric, costumes. And so I didn't have to really worry about that, it was just the arms and the head. Yeah. What? Why? Because in a Vita, the opening scene, how you doing by the way? Great. Water's coming back. In the opening scene, she's singing, and then they open up the casket, and you're like, oh no, it's her. She's dead. So that's how they do that. Some actors or some directors don't have that. They don't have a replica body, they just have her. Great, if you can start, we're going to, let's start with the shorter ones since so let's start with those. Just you want to have this right here so it's easier. What we're going to do next is we're going to put a mother mold on. So we plaster this when it's going to start to feel a little heavy, and the temperature is going to change a little bit. So when this cures, it'll get warm and then it'll get cold. So he's going to experience this. And we're going to do it the exact same way we did the silicone. We're going to start with the forehead. We're going to go down. We're going to wrap around. We're going to do the nose very last. I like to keep it consistent so they know where my hands are going next. I like to tell him every time where I am going so he is aware, because there's nothing fun. Thank you. And then we just want to strain it a little bit more. So with these, we strain them and we try to get as much water out as possible. It's going to be a little flimsy. And this is all good to go with the plaster. How you doing? Great. And I am not going to put it right to the edge of where the silicone is. because I'm going to use that extra silicone later. I know it's hard sometimes. I'm going to use that silicone later to kind of flap over to create a little bit of a key. All right, I'm going on the other side of you. So I'm just following an outline right now of his face, in a little mummy style happening. I'm going to go underneath your chin just to finish this look. Great. Okay, great. And so now we're going to start going over your eyes. So you always want to make sure the plaster is connecting to one another, and then you're blending the plasters together. You just need to use that with your fingers. I cannot do this process with gloves. It does not work for me. All right, I'm going to go over your mouth next. And like I said, I'm keeping it within this little frame that I kind of built. I think we're going to keep it the short pieces. Yeah. You just want to cut those in half, honestly. So you don't have to. One over your forehead. So this process, this part is when it starts to get a little bit harder for the actor or model because it starts to get heavy. Luckily, he's just doing a face and not an arm or a leg. Those are when it's like you really got to test your muscles. When you are doing those, there are ways to relieve that pressure for the actor. I'm going to go across your eye, your right eye. There are clever ways of gentle pressure onto your eyes. When I get on his eye, I'm not pressing. I am barely touching it because the silicone is a little bit movable and you don't want to press so it's pressing onto the eye and freak them out. Thank you. And do the other eye as well. So when an actor, say, has his or her arm or leg in a cast and they're like, it's heavy, it's too heavy, I don't think I can do this. Like I said, there's ways of doing that. You can lift up on the armpit to relieve the weight for them, and depending if they are comfortable, of course, lift up the hip for them. I had to do that with the lady that I had to replicate her whole body as well on the other side. Her legs were just so long that it took so much material that it was just so heavy for her, and I had to constantly be holding up her hip throughout the process, which does prolong the process. So if they ask for that, just to be going on your chin, just to be aware, of like, okay, I can help you, but just so you know, the quicker we get this done, the quicker I get it off. Because it's better to move quickly. All right, I'm going to go across your eyes again. I'm going to go underneath your nose. And I'm kind of doing a bit of like a weaving pattern. So I'll go in one direction and then I'll go into another direction just so it's all locked in. I'm going to go on top of your nose. It's not over your nostrils. You're good. You're good. Alright, I'm going to go over your eyes. So I just went across. Now I'm going to go vertical. Do I have any questions? Yeah.
What got you interested in like doing face more as a career?
What got me interested was when I did it at Yale. I did the internship before I worked there, and we had a class where we did mold making for one day, and I just fell in love with it. I just found it fascinating, and the realism that you get from the mold, like you saw on the foot, it's just miraculous. I'm gonna go across your eyes. And also keep in mind, guys, everybody does stuff differently. So just because I do it this way does not mean it is the correct way. Yeah, keep going. It's just one way of doing it. Okay, I'm gonna go across your mouth. I like to make the mother mold quite thick because, well, from my first one that I did when I was still learning, it was too flimsy, and I learned that can affect the mold, and then it breaks down easier. I'm going to go across your forehead again. How you doing? Awesome. Any other questions out there? It's a great time to ask questions.
What's your favorite mold that you made?
Oh, I just did a production of Frankenstein. Right? I did a production of Frankenstein where I had to create some dead limbs for the bride. How you doing? And I got to make them look all decayed and everything. And I love making things look dead and creepy and freaking people out. So that has probably been my favorite one. You want to cross your mouth? We're almost done. You're doing a great job.
How do you know how to make it last? Like, how do you know when to stop?
It's kind of just, I've been doing it for so long that I kind of just have a natural like feel of when it feels good. Usually like 3 to 4 layers is good. I've probably done about 4, so I'm wrapping up right now. I just like to do a little extra sometimes, just to make sure. All right, I'm going down your nostril. So as you see, I took this and I squeezed it to make it thinner because I'm now going to go down his nostril. Try to flatten out the top. How you doing? Awesome. All right, and now I'm going to just have a flat piece and go across his nose to latch in that piece I just put on his nostril. And I'm going to do the same with his mouth. How you doing? Awesome. Great. And then I'm just going to put 2 more on, and then we'll be good. We'll let it cure for a little bit, and then we'll be able to take it off. Well, after I put the key on. I'm just gonna put one on the other side. Actually, yeah, beautiful. It's like it's planned. Okay, so we've got all the plaster on that we need. So this area right here, we left very cleared off. I could have put another one right up against that, but it's not necessary. I'm gonna fill this in later and then add plaster on later. So I'm not too concerned about that area. So now what we're gonna do is rinse off the hands. We're gonna take this silicone in just a hot second and put it a little bit over the plaster. So why I'm doing that is because if you look at this mold, there's like, it kind of locks over. This just helps the mold stay in place when you're pouring it. How you doing? We're almost done. How are we on time, by the way? Somebody say. Do this twice. Alright, great. So for this, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to go around and just like put a layer right here. We'll see how far we get with the material. It needs to cure a little bit more. So we want to make sure the plaster is cured just a little bit before we put this on. And the reason that we left this silicone is so this can attach to it. So silicone attaches to silicone. And so we have this extra layer right here to latch on, and then it won't adhere to the plaster. So it'll be able to be removed. Are there any questions?
Could you use the same process for just like the chin, the cheekbone?
Sorry, so start that
Could
again?
you use like the same full process for like just individual?
Yeah, if you just wanted to do a section, you could just do that section, totally fine, yeah. Also always feels so badass when I get to use this tool. It's like, alright, so that's still a little wet, but it's not terrible. So we're just gonna put a little bit, doesn't need to be a lot. Yes.
So for in your workshop when you're doing other face molds, do you use like a hair salon chair? or have a specific setup?
Honestly, I just use whatever chair I've got because I usually do these at different locations instead of in my vicinity. So I kind of usually just have to figure out what I've got. It's one of the curses of being a freelancer, but then you don't have to worry about like purchasing one because it's always going to change depending on what angle they want to get. Another reason I love using this type of gun is that when we don't use it and we have it from like a cup that we're pouring onto it, it tends to drip more, and so we lose a lot more material. So it'll all be right here instead of on his face, because what's happening, the moment this starts to mix, it's starting to cure. So I've got like this amount already setting, so when it goes on there, it's a little bit slower to move. The gun is not the nozzle. Yeah. How you doing? Awesome.
Have you done partisan this?
Say what?
Have you done partisan this?
I did not. I have not yet. The Yale did it the year after I graduated, which was right before they hired me, so I missed out on it. I'm so upset.
What's a show or thing that you really want to cast?
Cast? Oh goodness.
Famous person.
I think more prosthetics. I really enjoy doing prosthetics. Generally, when you do face molds, for example, the face that I have all the way over there was used for Beauty and the Beast prosthetics. So you have to do this process. You pour plaster into this mold to get your plaster face. Then you will build on top of that clay and then create a mold on top of that. Remove that, remove the clay, put together, pour the silicone, and you have your prosthetic. So that's really fun to do. Because you get to be a little bit more creative and like decide what's happening. How you doing? Awesome. All right, once this cures, we're just gonna give it about like 5 minutes and we'll take it off. If the actor's having trouble at this point, I won't do this. Like, it's not necessary, it's just nice. But he seems to be a champ, so we're going for it. Anybody have any questions? Oh, sorry. Can I do it after? Yes, you can do it after. It gets a little bit trickier, but you can't do it. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Do you also do special effects makeup, not just the casting part?
I've done a little bit of special effects makeup, but I haven't really had the opportunity to do more, because the moment somebody finds out you specialize in props, they're like, you have to do props, because not a lot of people do props. So they're constantly trying to like snatch you. But I would love to do some more. I have a little bit of training. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
How many years of training do you have?
I've been professionally working for about 9 years now. Yeah. It's crazy. It's like keeps going up. No, I just graduated. Any other questions? No more questions? This is a good moment for questions. Yes. Yes, since I now live in LA, I have started to work on film. Right, you're almost ready. And doing a little bit of production design, which I really enjoy. The biggest thing with film and props is props and set decoration are completely two different departments. So when you're propping a show, you're not doing any of the set decoration, which is crazy for my mind, because in theater you're doing everything. But when you're on set, you're just, anything an actor touches is a prop. If they don't touch it, it's not on you, which bothers me because I want to be doing like every little thing. So I prefer to be production designer when I'm doing film, because I get to design the area, which is cool, but I also usually get to be a little bit more hands-on in every art department aspect on set, which is, yeah. There's my, yes. It's okay, we all are, we're in theater. We chose a crazy career.
Okay, so I watched Criminal Minds.
Yes.
And it just ended. And like the murderer dude, cut his faces off.
Yeah.
And so like, but he put them in a sugar box and like made them flat.
Yes.
So that just being like, instead of like a plaster.
So how would you replicate that? Is the question. Okay, so the question was, how would you replicate if somebody like skinned you off and flattened out the face? In that case, you would make a mold like this, and then you would put a very thin layer on here of just silicone, like the dragon skin that I have on the foot, which I bought. Oh, it's right over there. Forgive me. I would just do a very thin layer so then you can flatten it, and I'd be very careful with the nose because everything's going to want to drip towards the nose. So just try to like brush it out a little bit, and it should be okay. My suggestion. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Are you ready? You feel ready? Okay, so what's going to happen next? All right, give me. I lied. 30 more seconds. I lied. You're not ready yet. So close. My biggest problem about doing molds is I get too excited. So I always like want to start taking it off and no, it's not ready. Because if you take it off, then you've completely ruined it. And you're just like, oh, patient, which I'm not good at. Yes.
Since sometimes you do face molds and everything, and I know for like some face molds, those are for like prosthetics. Would you like? I know that like prosthetics are part of makeup, but would you still consider that a prop since you specialize in props more?
So it's that really gray world, like the person, the costume isn't a prop. It's one of those things we always have to figure out. It really depends on where you're at, what theater you're at. Do they want me to do it because they know I specialize in this? Usually what happens is I will build it and then I'll give it to makeup and they adhere it and do any makeup touch-ups to it that need it. But I'll prep it, create it, paint it to as close as I can. Yeah, so it's kind of a teamwork, but it depends. Some makeup artists know how to do it and they just do it, and that's great. I found in LA a lot of makeup artists do that because film is kind of more in that area than props. But East Coast it seems more like props stuff. Yes.
How do you know when it's ready to be removed?
So how I can tell is what I've been doing every time I come up here is I've been touching it. And if it's not tacky, it's ready. So this is pretty much good to go now. Also, you can feel, sorry, I'm so close to you. Feel the mother mold. It's still a little warm, so I don't want to pull it too quickly. When it's really cold, that's a good time to take it off because it's fully cured. Any other questions? No. You don't want to use a heat gun because that can affect how it cures, and it will definitely affect their skin temperature. They will be able to feel that. Yeah, because it'll like the heat will go through everywhere. Yes, if it's colder, well, no. If it's colder, I think it slows it down. Yeah, I think it actually slows it down because heat is what cures it. So heat is what makes it go faster. So, for example, I said I asked for lukewarm water, which Jenna got, was awesome. If this was cold, it would have taken longer to cure. If it was hot, it would have been like bam, 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 like, wait, we're going too quick. So like that medium temperature is perfect. Yes?
Could you cast something on yourself? Like obviously not your face, but like
Just ready to go. Stop fire. Yeah, you could. I feel like I have done that before. I think I've passed in my hand before and then realized how dumb that was because I only had one hand to work with. But I was so excited to like learn how to do mold making. But you could probably like do your foot if you were really clever. But I always suggest having a second hand because even like me doing this, having Jenna helping is amazing to have. So I mean, you could, but I would highly suggest not. Unless you're doing like pouring it into a bucket and just sticking your hand in there, then you could. That would be okay. Yes.
Have you ever done a full body cast?
No, and I want to. Ugh, I would love to do a full body cast, but I have not had the opportunity. Because usually budget and everything, they're like, oh, let's make this part foam and cover it with costume.
That's another question. What's the hardest part of the body to cast?
I would say the hand and the foot. No, the foot. I'm going to say with the foot. So the foot is really hard because
you have to, like, there's so many different angles to it, and however way you set it, there's always gonna be a down area. So like, for example, underneath the chin is really hard to get because gravity, unless we have him laying down completely and then, we can get it. It's like that idea with the foot. If I have the foot laying like this, the heel is gonna be the hardest part to get. If I have it laying like this, the bottom, so the foot is kind of the hardest one to get. Also, the toes, I always tell people, wiggle your toes when you're putting the silicone on so it gets inside your toes. Some people can't really do that. So it's harder and you have more air pockets in there. With your hands, you can easily like move your hand around to get it around. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna do it. Okay, are you ready? You feel ready. It seems like it's your time. Okay, so what I'm gonna ask you to do, Steven, is you're gonna spread your legs and you're gonna put your head down, not yet, I'm just gonna talk this through. You're gonna put your head down with your hands on your face. So you're gonna hold the mold so the mold doesn't fall off. It's not gonna fall off, but this is kind of to help. You're gonna put your head between your legs. I'm gonna go through and start putting my finger underneath here and start wiggling it out. And then you're gonna use all of your muscles in your face to start wiggling and moving to pop it off. So are you ready? Awesome, all right, if you can bend down, great, just like that, and start moving. I'm just gonna gently put my finger here. That body cream works great. Voila! We have our mold. See your face? So in this mold, we have, I would fill these nose if we were like actually casting that and everything. We have some air pockets here that are pretty large. Sometimes that happens in the eye area because some people have more of a pronounced eyebrow and it just doesn't want to sink in very well. This area, we can probably fill a little bit. We can fix those. They're gonna be a little bit more of a smoother area and not gonna have all of the texture that the rest of the face has, but it is fixable. What's gonna happen is, if you don't wanna fill those holes, you just put your silicone in here, your plaster or whatnot, and then you just shave or cut off that excess because it's a hole, so it's gonna come out protruding. So this is that. What I do next is I wash this. So I'll take this off here. I'll show you. So like I said, the silicone doesn't stick to plaster, so we're gonna pop this all off. And so I would just take this whole thing and go wash it and put soap and water on it. It's not gonna hurt at all. I just wanna get all that Vaseline, all that body cream off, because if you don't do that, that's gonna be on your positive, your casting, on your plaster, on your foot, and you don't want that on there because it's gonna affect the mold itself. What were the other words I was gonna say? But yeah, so it's clean that. If you wanna go clean up or if you just wanna wait and then clean up after, that's totally fine, whatever you're comfortable with. But yeah, does anybody have any questions right now? So I would love to ask you questions of how it felt to have this on you and what your experience was.
The eyes were definitely like, as it drips over your eyes, you're like, oh my god, that was the weirdest part.
Awesome. I'm going to pass this around. Be aware it is sticky, so if you don't want to touch it, you don't want your hands to get dirty, don't worry. I also have gloves up here if you don't have gloves on. But I would just hold it very gently. It's still curing, so don't take the mold out, but I'll let you guys have this. And just be careful handling it. And like I said, there's still cream on there. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, it's really weird when it drips over your eyes. Like that, my immediate reaction is like something's on my eyes. Oh my god. So trying not to blink there was really hard.
Yeah.
And then the lips, like it didn't feel like anything was on my lips. Like it's like really hard to not like open my mouth to try to breathe because I was like, I can open my mouth, but then I was like, oh nope, there's something there. It was really weird. It's pretty easy.
Awesome. Cool. What time is it? Right, like my time broke.
Amazing. We still have 30 minutes. We love that.
Okay, so we have 30 minutes left. I would love if any questions you guys have about props. It doesn't have to be about mold making. It can be about any question you have about props. It can be about working in New York City. It can be what the internship is like at Yale. It can be working in LA, freelancing. Any questions you have, I'm here to answer them. You looked like you were ready. You were like, I got a question.
I would like to intern at Yale and do Yale for grad school. Is it a good program?
Amazing. It is the best decision I ever did. And talk to me after, and we'll exchange info so I can get you in contact with the props master there. And so you can start talking about next year. They've already filled this coming year, but the following year is available. And if you're interested in props, they have a props internship. They also have a carpentry internship, a lighting internship, costume internship, and projection internship. They're all one-year programs. If you are wanting to do the TD&P track with Yale as a master's, you can do an internship for 2 years, apply, and then be a second year. So it's a 3-year program for the MFA. If you're wanting to like specialize in props and then carpentry and then do the TD, do that, or just go for TD. But let's chat after, for sure. Great, chat with me as well. We will chat. I have only good things to say about the program. It's hard and you won't sleep, so be prepared for that. Yes. Ooh, my favorite prop would be the dead rooster. So I got the chance to make a full-size rooster. You want to take all of this off so you're not like, I feel like you're gonna like suffocate. I'm scared. I'm worried. Sorry. Distractions. The dead rooster that I made for 7 guitars, I believe, was the play at Yale. And what had to happen was the man came on with the rooster. He was pissed off at the rooster, and he's like, I'm just gonna kill it. And he chops off its head, and then it bleeds. So I had to create the whole blood mechanism, how did it attach, how to make it real. Faux taxidermy is also one of my specialties. So it's mold making, faux taxidermy, and upholstery are my 3 top specialties that I love to do and just could do all day long. The process of that was very long. I did a lot of research. Whenever I'm working, I print out as many research images as I possibly can. I put them in front of me when I'm working. Like, I never have my research images on a phone and a computer. I have them right in front of my face. I do a lot of sketches. I'm big on sketches, figuring out what the size, the dimensions, yada, yada, yada. I chose to get a real rooster, it's not called hide, but we'll go with hide because we all understand what that means, with the wings and everything. And then the body part was all fake. I made the legs and everything, and I made a casting of a taxidermy foam head for a rooster because it had to drop on the floor, and if I were to use that, it would just break every night. So I wanted a silicone one that would not break. But I also had to find a silicone that wouldn't bounce. So there's different types of smooth-on products that you can have for that. So I also got to do some mold making for that one too. I always like try to sneak it in every project I do. It's ridiculous. And then I created I put an IV bag right in its chest and covered it with the flapper feathers that you could like unsnap and each night to get it out. I put a tube up its neck, and then I took a cork, attached it to the head, and just popped that cork onto the tube. So that created, it's kind of like a bottle, it's popped in, it pops out. So he could hit it and pop it off. It would release, and then he would hold it down and squeeze the chest so the blood would come out every night. It's still my favorite. It's my favorite. It was huge. It was ridiculous. I made it too big. I got excited, but they ended up loving it, and the actors all freaked out. And this poor person who was like very vegan and stuff like started panicking. I was like, it's me, kind of. Looks good. But yeah. So, any questions? Well, there's got to be more questions. Yes.
So how did you make the? Sorry.
You're fine.
How did you make the rooster head match the line? Like painting and.
So what I did for that is I definitely did all the painting and everything on top of it. I used a urethane rubber so I could use acrylic paint instead of a silicone, which I would require different types of paints and such. And then I just added feathers that I used for the body on top. I also have pictures of all these on my website, and if anybody wants my business card, come to me afterwards and I can get that out and ask questions. Yes?
What were the prosthetics you used in Beauty and the Beast?
So Beauty and the Beast, what I did is I used silicone products. There's a product called Dragon Skin FX, which is very similar to what this foot is made out of, which is dragon skin, but it's for special effects. It's a little bit lighter, it moves a little bit more with the skin. So what I did is I did the same process we did here, and I made a plaster face. When I'm doing prosthetics, I like to make sure my plaster mold or my plaster positive is extremely strong. So I actually add in burlap within layers. So I kind of weave it through. I put a layer of burlap in, put some plaster, put some burlap, I like to have it a little bit concaved here so I can like hold it and not just like, oh, I dropped it. And it busts. So I like to make it really strong because I'm going to be putting clay on top of this. And I put a non-drying plasticine clay that I can mold the design onto here. Then I will create a mold on top of that with plaster. And you have to be very clever of where you put it or it'll like bust and everything. It gets a little complicated. Some people like drill holes to act as like keys and such. So once I have that, I have my mold, I pop it off, I take off all of the clay. So I remove all of the clay and I then put the two molds together and I have like a port somewhere. I think for this guy, I had it coming from the top, that I pour the silicone in while this is compressed together. And so the silicone will go into all of those cavities that the clay had created on the mold. And then when you pop it off, you have your prosthetic and then you paint it from there.
How would you make one that looks like they have their eyes open?
So for that, you can do it one or two ways. One, you can do the process that we just did and then carve out the eyes, mold your eyes, make another mold, create this again and go from there. Another way that generally happens is you mold a face. So you get some clay and you don't even do the casting on a human. You get pictures, you make sure you have pictures of every single angle of them. It's correct to the skin tone, everything, just every aspect you can get. And then you start molding your face. And then make a cast of that. And do that way. Because usually when directors want eyes open, they also want something funny in the mouth. And you can't do that with one like that. So, yeah. Yes?
So when you're casting an actor in someone who has
So very good question. I have not, which lucky. I always ask, Steven, why? I don't know. Steven, if he had any allergies, he said no. I said, I hope we don't find out today. We didn't, so we're good. Generally, these products are skin safe and allergy safe. Smooth-On is a great company, so I don't know for them. Advertising for Smooth-On, guys. It's great. If I did have somebody with an allergy, I would have to research which products would be okay with them. Because if they're allergic to this, then they're probably going to be allergic to the other products. So it's research, yeah. And usually you can call Smooth-On and ask them, and they'll be like, use this product instead. Sometimes they'll suggest products that aren't even theirs. Like, they're great. Any other questions? Yes. So great. So I stay away from sugar glass. I don't like the final product. It has Smooth-On has a great product called Smash It, and it's clear. It doesn't get that yellow tint that sugar glass tends to do. It's not as brittle. You know, when you break it, it's like choosy. It's a clean break. It's the best of it. There's not any bubbles really with it. You can tint it if you want, and it's a clear color. So I prefer to use that. But that also comes down if you have the budget for it. You know, Smooth-On, as much as I wish it was cheap, it's not. So sugar glass, you know, you kind of have to. But yeah, I prefer to use that because it just comes out. Other questions? What's our time?
39.
39? Should be too. You're tired, bro. Great. Are there any other questions about working in New York or working in LA or any prop questions in general? It's the last call. Oh, there is a difference, let me tell you. I think the biggest struggle for me has been understanding the mentality of LA versus New York. I am very much East Coast mentality. I'm go, go, go. I am on time. I'm like, da, 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 da. Let's do my thing. Let's be short. Let's get concise emails. I do not need to know your life story. This is not personal. That's kind of how I go. LA is a little bit more laid back. My theory is they're like 3 hours behind, so they're like, yeah, we're already late. So we just go with that. They tend to, it's interesting because when I first moved out there and I would write emails, I would have friends who I knew, they were like, shit, that was a little harsh. And I was like, I was just getting to the point, this is what I need. Why, like, they tend to like have a little bit more of a conversation in an email. Like, how are you? What's going on? And I'm just like, I need this by Tuesday. I don't understand. So that's an adjustment in making sure like they understand, like, this isn't me being harsh, this is just how I work. Also, traveling in LA, you know, you have your car, you don't have the subway system. So you have to really account for when you're shopping, how long you're gonna be gone that day. Because when I did Little Shop, I had to go down to the Florida district, I think like 4 or 5 times, and that was a half-a-day trip for me. It was only 6 miles away, but it took an hour to get there. So you have to really account for that when you're budgeting out a show time-wise. So I'd say that would be big. And I think it's a little bit more expensive, in my opinion. Maybe it's the same, and I just like, I'm like, it's more expensive. It's just like, yeah, right? It is, right? It definitely is. Some people try to tell me it's not. I'm just like, I don't think that's true, right? All right, any other questions? Yes. Oh, so I'm originally from Indiana. So I'm a hick from the sticks 100%. Moved to the city and I was like, hillbilly them hills. That was crazy. So that was an adjustment, just that. I went to Ball State University for my undergrad. It was an amazing program, good theater. And then after that, I moved to New York and then went to Yale, back to New York. Yeah. And Indiana was definitely an adjustment because you smile at everybody. And you're like, how are you doing today? And like, it's a real conversation. New York, you're like, how are you? And you like just leave and you're like, oh, there's no conversation. So it's crazy. But then I picked it up. Yes. You're fine. You can ask. Hey, this is like the perfect time, guys, because who knows when you're gonna have another chance to like ask questions. So like, go for it. So before that, so before props is acting, which I actually have gotten back into in LA, so I get to do a little bit of both. East Coast, kind of going back to the mentality. East Coast is like, you do one thing. LA's like, let's do everything, guys, let's chill. So I love that. So it was all acting, but I didn't get into the acting program at my school. So I was like, I need to do something. Nobody wanted to do props, and I was like, well, I need a job. So I started doing it. And then I found out nobody else was really doing props. And I was like, oh, I can excel a little bit quicker here and get a job faster. And, you know, I showed up on time. I was ready to work. I was hands-on on everything. And just every time I would build something, I was more interested. And that kind of spiraled. And my professor at Ball State told me about the internship at Yale. I laughed at him in his face. I was like, I'm never going to get into that. And walked away, and then like after weeks of bugging me, I finally applied, and yeah, and then just went from there. Yes. So finding jobs in LA is a lot different from finding jobs in New York. Because I went to Yale, I have a lot of East Coast contacts, and when I first moved to New York, I just started contacting Propsmasters. I said, hey, I'm new to the city. I know nothing. Can I just watch you for a day? And they were like, somebody wants to do props? Great. So they would have me come in. I came on time. I wasn't an asshole. That's like the biggest advice I can give to anybody. Don't be an asshole. Nobody wants to work with you. So they would rather have somebody who knows nothing and is nice than someone who knows everything and is an asshole. Just like So I just spoke to all the different props masters. I followed them. I showed up. I did my work. I was eager. I was ready. I put in the time. And they were like, you're great. Hey, why don't you come with me to this show? And it just naturally kind of happened like that. LA, it's a lot different because a lot more people are film-based. So a lot of the theaters are they're great theaters, but there's not that much of like, I haven't gotten in 100% with all of them yet. So it's still trying to network and network. I think the networking is a little bit harder in LA than it is in New York. But I'm also still new to LA, so yeah. And there's a lot of Facebook pages. There's like prop summits in New York. I'm going to be starting a prop summit in LA soon, and so we'll have that going on. And it's just communication. And don't be an asshole. Anybody else? No? This is your chance. This is the moment. It's almost the moment. Okay. Oh, yes.
So you said you act as well.
Yes.
So how do you kind of manage both props and acting?
Insanely. Yeah, so I do acting and props, and it is a balance, and it is a balance with my agent as well. So I have to make sure when I take on a props job that that theater knows if an audition comes up, I have to go to that audition. Because my agent is going to be pissed off if I miss an audition. They're hard to come by. If you get one, you better be there. You miss it, you just screw up. So I make sure the theater is aware of that. They understand that, even during tech, which they hate. But I also speak to my agent and be like, hey, I'm doing the show. This is tech week. It's a very important week. But if network, if a network audition comes up, obviously I'm going to go to it. But just keep in mind that might be a little crazy. So it's just communication. Communication is key. And then balancing the schedule of, like when you're in acting classes and when you're on set for this and that. Also, when I'm on set for props, I make sure the director knows I'm an actor. And I make sure everybody knows I'm an actor. I'm not gonna like hide it or anything. But I'm also not gonna be like, hey, are you gonna hire me now? Because I'm not gonna do that either. Just be like, yeah, I do acting. If you have something that fits me, cool, great, awesome. I'm now gonna go back to doing it. Excel at that. I know you're a hard worker. We'll keep you in mind. Yeah, it's a balance. It's crazy. Any other questions? Yes.
How did you find an agent?
How do I what?
How did you find an agent?
Oh goodness, that was a long process. Finding an agent is extremely challenging. Submitting. Luckily, I was a part in one of the classes that I took in San Diego, just this beautiful showcase over here. And a director from that really liked me, cast me in his movie, and then called his friend, who is one of the top agents, and he's pretty much like, sign her. And so I was like, hi, help. And they were like, okay. So, but I definitely love that. Definitely. A lot of people, it's definitely submitting. Getting in your face. Yeah. Persistence. That's key. Any other questions? What time are we?
47.
Yes, I love it. The reason I keep pushing for questions is because I remember like being in these rooms and not asking questions and then like regretting it. It's like, this is really like valuable moment. Ask whatever, like no judgments. Yes. Acting wise, I've done a lot of plays. And I just started doing film acting, so I just finished up a movie with Danny Trejo and Brian Austin Green called Cross 3, and I'll be doing Cross 4. And then there's been just a few student films. So like I said, I just moved to LA, and I just got back into acting. So I haven't been doing acting for a while. It takes forever. It's a lifetime commitment. Yes?
I was just going to ask, so you went to school for props?
Yes.
So I'm going to school for acting, but I'm interested in props.
Awesome.
So do you think it would be easier to go the way you did or the way I have currently?
There is no right answer.
Right on.
There's no right answer to art, guys. There are no rules. I didn't go be an asshole, obviously. Can't repeat that enough. But it's really just figuring out what works for you and just following your path and be true to yourself and be a good person, do good work, and that's like the honest answer. Any other questions? Yes. I do have a website. Do you want me to rattle it off or just give it to you? Give you my business card? Great. I have a digital business card, so once we're done, I will give it to you guys. I found this really cool thing called KCACTF, and you can just put your business card on there. You just scan it with your camera. Yeah, I know, right? I'm like saving trees now. It's crazy. It's what California does to you. Yeah. But yeah, I'll definitely give you guys all my business cards if you want them, obviously. Just come up afterwards and I'll give it to you guys.
But yeah, my website has all of my mold making, my prosthetics, all that stuff. I don't have any my acting or production design on it. It's just props. Any other questions? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes. Been in? Oh my gosh. Honestly, my favorite production I've ever been in was like the shittiest production of Grease ever. Like the worst community theater you could think of. But I got to play Patty Simcox, who's like the most annoying person ever. I enjoyed doing that, so that was fun. Anybody else? Any other pop questions? What's our time? I clearly want to like make it exactly 2, obviously.
50.
Okay, cool. All right, if we're good on questions, y'all are free to go. Thank you guys so much for coming. If you have any questions, I'm here. Please ask me.